Vexith stared at the ancient star chart floating above her workstation. The holographic display cast blue light across her scaled features as she traced a clawed finger along the spiral arm of the galaxy. Everything was there. Every star system, every trade route, every colony world, everything except one massive region of space that simply ended at a clean, sharp border. The label read simply, Human Space. She leaned back in her chair, her tail curling with confusion. As a junior cartographer for the Galactic Concordance Archives, her job was to update old maps with new survey data. But this map, like every other map in the database for the past 800 cycles, showed nothing inside human territory. No stars, no planets, no navigation points. Just blank space with a simple warning at the border. Do not enter. What made it stranger was that nobody seemed to care. When she mentioned it to her supervisor that morning, he had simply nodded and moved on to other topics. When she asked her coworker at lunch why the maps were incomplete, he had stared at her for a long moment, then changed the subject without answering. It was like everyone knew something she did not. Or worse, like they knew but refused to remember. Vexith pulled up the historical archives, going back further than she probably should. The older maps showed more detail. 500 cycles ago, human space was marked but still blank. 700 cycles ago, the same. But then she found something. A map from 850 cycles ago, before the Great Silence. This map was different. Human space was fully charted, with dozens of star systems marked, trade routes connecting them to the rest of the galaxy, and even diplomatic stations at the borders. Humans had been members of the Concordance. They had traded with other species. They had embassies and cultural exchange programs, and then suddenly they were gone, not destroyed, not conquered, just withdrawn. The maps after that date showed the border growing, the buffer zone expanding, and the interior details disappearing as if someone had carefully erased them. Vexith felt a chill run down her spine. She pulled up the official records of the Great Silence. The entry was surprisingly short for such a major event. It read, "In Concordance Year 3247, humanity withdrew from galactic society. All treaties dissolved by mutual agreement. Border established. No further contact, that was it. No explanation, no reason. Just a simple statement of fact that somehow everyone accepted without question." She dug deeper, accessing the restricted archives with her low-level security clearance. Most files about humans were marked with a strange classification she had never seen before. Voluntary Amnesia Protocol. When she tried to open them, a warning appeared. This information may cause psychological distress. Species-level trauma response possible. Proceed with caution. Her hand hovered over the accept button. Every instinct told her to close the file and forget about it. But she was a cartographer. Her entire life was about filling in blank spaces on maps. She could not leave this mystery unsolved. She pressed accept. The file opened, and what she saw made her blood run cold. It was a military report from the time of the Great Silence. The words were clinical, carefully neutral, but the meaning was clear. 7 species had formed a coalition. They called themselves the Unity Alliance. They had decided that humanity was weak, too individualistic to be a threat, and that human space contained valuable resources. So they invaded. The report listed fleet numbers. Millions of ships. Billions of soldiers. It should have been a quick conquest. The Unity Alliance was powerful, made up of some of the most advanced military forces in the galaxy. But then the report stopped. The last entry, dated 3 cycles after the invasion began, was a single line. All contact lost with invasion forces. No survivors. No wreckage. No trace. Vexith read it again. Millions of ships. Billions of soldiers, gone, not destroyed in battle, not captured, just gone as if they had never existed. 3 cycles after that, a single human ship had arrived at the Concordance Council chambers. The recording was still in the archive. Vexith pulled it up with shaking hands. The video showed a human woman, middle-aged by their standards, wearing a simple diplomatic uniform. She stood before the assembled council members and spoke in a calm, even voice. "We did not want this war. We did not seek conflict, but your Unity Alliance chose to invade our homes, threaten our families, and attempt to take what was ours. We have responded appropriately. Your invasion forces are gone. They will not return. They cannot return. We have made certain of that. The human paused, and her expression softened slightly. We bear you no further ill will. We do not wish to conquer or dominate, but we have learned that our presence in the galactic community creates temptation and danger. Therefore, we are withdrawing. We will establish a border. We will not cross it. You will not cross it. This is not a negotiation. This is a statement of reality. We hope one day that circumstances may change. Until then, goodbye. The video ended. The council chamber recording showed the assembled representatives sitting in stunned silence. And then, one by one, they had agreed. The border was established. The treaties were dissolved. And humanity withdrew behind their wall. Vexith sat in her chair, her mind racing. The blank space on the map suddenly made perfect sense. It was not ignorance. It was not a lack of data. It was fear. A fear so deep that every species in the galaxy carried it in their genetic memory. A fear that made them instinctively avoid even thinking about what lay beyond that border. She looked at the map again. The clean border, the empty space, the simple warning. And for the first time in 800 cycles, someone asked the forbidden question, what happened to those millions of ships? Where did they go? And what had humanity become that could make them simply vanish? Vexith knew she should stop. She should close the files, delete her search history, and go back to updating trade routes and colony positions. That was the safe choice. The sane choice, but she was a cartographer, and there was a blank space on her map. She pulled up a new file and began making notes. If nobody else would ask these questions, then she would. If nobody else would investigate, then she would find others who could. Somewhere in this galaxy, there had to be someone who remembered without fear, someone whose genetic memory was broken or damaged, someone who could help her learn the truth. The map floated above her desk, the blank space seeming larger now, more ominous, but also more inviting. Behind that border was a mystery 800 cycles old. Behind that border was the truth about what humanity had become, and Vexith intended to find it. 3 weeks later, Vexith sat in a dark bar on the edge of concordant space. The establishment catered to outcasts and wanderers, those who did not quite fit into normal society. It was the perfect place to find the people she needed. Her search had led her to some interesting discoveries. There were others like her scattered across the galaxy. Individuals whose species' memory did not work properly. Some had genetic defects. Others had suffered brain injuries. A few had simply been born different. But they all shared one thing in common. They did not feel the instinctive fear when humans were mentioned. One of them sat across from her now. Captain Zilthos was a Vryn, a species known for their military prowess. But Zilthos was old, with scars across his carapace and one eye replaced by a mechanical implant. He had served near human space before, the Great Silence, though he claimed to remember nothing from that time. You are asking dangerous questions, young one, he said, his voice like grinding stone. His good eye studied her carefully. Why do you want to know about them? Because the maps are wrong, Vexith replied. Because there is a massive blank space in our charts, and nobody wants to talk about why. Because I am a cartographer and I cannot accept incomplete data. Zilthos laughed, a harsh sound. That is a better reason than most. Very well. I will tell you what I know. But first, you must understand something. The fear you do not feel, it is there for a reason. Your ancestors learned something so terrifying that they coded it into their very DNA. They wanted their children and their children's children to know one simple truth. Stay away from human space. He took a long drink from his cup before continuing. I was there, he said quietly, at the border. After the invasion, they sent us to investigate what happened to the Unity Alliance fleet. We found nothing. No debris, no bodies, no energy signatures. It was as if millions of ships had simply ceased to exist, but we did find something else. What? Vexith leaned forward. Art, Zilthos said. The humans had left Art. We found 3 planets where the Unity Alliance had established forward bases. The bases were gone, but in their place were sculptures. Beautiful, terrible sculptures made from materials we could not identify. Each one was different, but they all showed the same thing. Ships frozen in impossible shapes, twisted into forms that should not exist in 3-dimensional space. He shuddered at the memory. They were not just destroyed, they were transformed, changed into something else. And the most terrifying part? Our scientists studied the sculptures. They determined that the ships were still there, still occupied. The crews were still alive inside, existing in some state we could not understand. The humans had not killed their attackers. They had turned them into warnings. Vexith felt her scales crawl. That is impossible. No species has that kind of power. No technology can do that. That is what we thought too. Zilthos agreed. But the humans did it anyway, and that was when we understood. The Unity Alliance had not attacked a weak species. They had attacked something far beyond our comprehension. Something that saw our most powerful weapons as toys. Something that could reshape reality itself. Over the next few days, Vexith met with others. A xenopsychologist named Dr. Halvan explained the science behind the genetic memory. When a species experiences extreme trauma, the fear response can be coded into their DNA and passed to future generations. Entire populations could inherit instinctive reactions to threats their ancestors faced. But this is different, Halvan said, her tendrils waving excitedly. This is not just genetic memory. This is something more. Every species in the concordance, regardless of their biology, shares the same reaction to humans. It is as if the fear itself was implanted directly into the collective consciousness of the galaxy. Could the humans do that? Vexith asked. Halvan paused. If they can turn ships into living sculptures, then yes, I believe they could. But why would they? Why create this universal amnesia? Vexith thought about the diplomatic message she had seen. The human woman's words echoed in her mind. We bear you no further ill will. Maybe it was mercy, she said slowly. Maybe they did not want us to live with the knowledge of what they had done. Maybe they thought it would be kinder to make us forget. That evening, Vexith returned to her small apartment with her head full of information. She had learned enough to understand the basics. 800 cycles ago, humanity had been attacked. They had responded with power beyond comprehension. And then they had withdrawn, taking their secrets with them. But she still did not know the most important thing. What had humanity become? What kind of beings had they evolved into that could manipulate reality itself? She pulled up the star charts again, looking at the border. It had been stable for 800 cycles. Nothing went in. Nothing came out. The humans had kept their word, but now Vexith had a choice to make. She could stop here. She had learned enough to satisfy her curiosity. She could fill in the blank space on her map with a simple note, Forbidden Zone, and move on with her life. Or she could do something incredibly stupid. She could try to cross the border. The idea was insane. Everyone she had spoken with had warned her against it. Even those without the genetic fear understood that approaching human space was dangerous. The sculptures alone proved that humans did not welcome visitors, but Vexith was a cartographer, and there was still a blank space on her map. She began making preparations. She would need a ship. She would need a crew of people who did not feel the fear. She would need supplies and equipment. Most importantly, she would need information about the border itself. How was it defended? Were there warning systems? Could it even be crossed? As she worked, she kept thinking about the diplomatic message. The human woman had said they hoped circumstances might change one day. What did that mean? Were they waiting for something? Were they hoping that eventually the galaxy would be ready for contact again? Or were they simply being polite while delivering an ultimatum? Vexith did not know, but she intended to find out. She sent out messages to everyone she had met. Captain Zilthos, Dr. Halvan, others who had expressed interest in her research. The message was simple. I am going to the border. I am going to learn the truth. Who wants to come with me? The ship was called the Wanderer's Hope, an old transport vessel that had seen better days. Vexith had bought it with her savings and some questionable loans. It was not much, but it had a functioning drive system and enough space for her small crew. 7 people had answered her call. Captain Zilthos, who claimed he wanted one last adventure before he died. Dr. Halvin, who saw this as the research opportunity of a lifetime, 3 others whose genetic memories were damaged in various ways, and one very special member, X-41, was an artificial intelligence construct from before the Great Silence. It had been found in a derelict station near the border, its memory core still intact. Unlike organic beings, X-41 did not have genetic memory. It remembered everything exactly as it had happened. "I have been waiting for someone to ask the right questions," X-41 said, its voice coming through the ship's speakers. "For 800 cycles, I have been waiting for someone brave enough, or foolish enough, to seek the truth." "What do you remember?" Vexith asked as they prepared for departure. "Everything," X-41 replied. "I remember when humans were just another species in the concordance. They were creative, curious, sometimes aggressive, but fundamentally similar to everyone else. They had faster than light travel, but nothing exceptional. They had weapons, but nothing that made them stand out. They were ordinary." "What changed?" Dr. Halvin asked. "The war changed them," X-41 said. "Or perhaps it revealed what they always were. When the Unity Alliance invaded, humanity responded in ways that should have been impossible. They manipulated gravity to turn entire fleets into singularities. They bent space-time to trap ships in infinite loops. They reached into the quantum field and rewrote the probability of their enemy's existence." The AI paused as if choosing its words carefully. But the most terrifying part was that they were not using technology. They were doing it themselves. Individual humans, acting together, somehow channeling forces that should have required massive machinery and enormous power sources. It was as if the war had awakened something dormant in their species, something that had been sleeping, waiting for a reason to emerge. The Wanderer's Hope left port 3 days later. They set course for the buffer zone, the empty region of space surrounding human territory. It would take 2 weeks to reach the border at normal speeds. As they traveled, X-41 continued to share its memories. It told them about the sculptures Zilthos had mentioned. There had been more than 3. Dozens of them, scattered throughout the buffer zone. Each one was a masterpiece, and each one was a warning. One sculpture showed a fleet of ships woven together into a spiral pattern that somehow existed in 4 dimensions. Another showed vessels transformed into crystal structures that sang with harmonics from multiple universes. A third displayed warships folded into shapes that the eye could not quite process, creating optical illusions that made viewers physically ill. They were not just warnings, X-41 explained. They were demonstrations. The humans were showing the galaxy what they could do. And more importantly, what they chose not to do. They could have turned every species into living art. Instead, they chose isolation. 2 weeks later, they reached the buffer zone. The change was immediately noticeable. Space itself felt different here, cleaner somehow. The usual background radiation of a populated galaxy was absent. No ship traffic, no communication signals, no signs of civilization, just empty space and abandoned worlds. They found the first sculpture on the 3rd day in the buffer zone. It hung in space near a dead planet, exactly where X-41's memories had placed it. The AI had not lied. The sculpture was beautiful and terrible in equal measure. Vexith stared at it through the view screen. Dozens of warships, each one kilometers long, had been twisted and merged into a single flowing shape that resembled a flower, but it was a flower that hurt to look at, its petals existing in angles that should not be possible. Dr. Halvin ran scans. The readings are impossible. The ships are still there. The crews are still alive inside. But they exist in a state of suspended time. For them, only a moment has passed since they were transformed. They will stay like this forever unless something changes them back. "Can they be changed back?" one of the crew members asked. "Only by whoever did this to them," Halvin replied. "Only by humans." They continued deeper into the buffer zone, finding more sculptures. Each one was different. Each one showcased a different aspect of human capability. One showed ships converted into living ecosystems, with plants and animals that should not exist growing from the metal. Another displayed vessels turned into musical instruments, their hulls vibrating with sounds that created emotions directly in the mind. They were playing, Zilthos said, his voice filled with old fear. The Unity Alliance sent their best warriors, their most advanced weapons, and the humans treated it like a game. They were not trying to win. They were experimenting, testing their abilities. Finally, after 5 days in the buffer zone, they reached it, the border. It was not a physical wall or a line of defense stations. It was simply a place where space changed. On one side, normal space-time. On the other side, something different. Something that their instruments could not properly measure. Vexith brought the ship to a stop at what she estimated was a safe distance. They all gathered on the bridge, staring at the view screen. Before them, hanging in space, was a simple holographic message. It appeared in every language known to the Concordance, including several that had gone extinct. The message read, "Turn back. This is your final courtesy. Cross this line and we cannot guarantee your safety, not from us but from what we have become. We do not wish to harm you. Please do not make us choose." "So they are still here," Halvin whispered. "Still watching, still aware of us. They never left," X-41 confirmed. "They just withdrew. There is a difference." Vexith studied the message. The wording was careful, polite, but also absolute. This was not a negotiation. It was a simple statement of reality. "What do we do?" one of the crew asked. Vexith thought about the sculptures, about the Unity Alliance fleet that had disappeared, about 800 cycles of silence. And then she thought about why she had come here in the first place, because there was a blank space on her map. She took a deep breath and opened a communication channel toward the border. "This is Vexith of the Galactic Concordance. I am a cartographer. I have come to fill in the blank space on my map. I do not seek to invade or threaten. I only want to understand. Will you speak with me?" For 3 hours, nothing happened. The crew waited in tense silence, watching the border. Vexith had almost given up hope when the sensors detected something approaching. It was not a ship. At least not in any conventional sense. Space itself seemed to fold and unfold, and suddenly there was a vessel where moments before there had been nothing. It did not fly toward them. It simply became present in their vicinity, as if it had always been there and they had only just noticed. The design was beautiful and alien. It looked organic, like a living thing grown rather than built. Smooth curves and flowing lines that seemed to shift and change when viewed from different angles. A communication signal came through. "Voice only. May I come aboard?" a woman asked. Her tone was warm, almost friendly. "I promise I mean no harm. I just thought it would be easier to talk face to face." Vexith looked at her crew. Everyone was nervous, but they had come this far. She activated the comm. "You are welcome aboard the Wanderer's Hope." The woman appeared in their airlock without any visible means of transport. One moment the space was empty, the next she was there as if she had simply decided to exist in that location. She was human, appearing to be in her 30s with dark hair and kind eyes. She wore a simple uniform that looked like it came from centuries ago. "My name is Elena Vasquez," she said, extending her hand in the human gesture of greeting. "I am a commander in the Human Concordance Defense Fleet. Or at least I was. The titles do not mean much anymore." Vexith carefully shook the offered hand. "How old are you?" she asked, unable to help herself. Elena smiled. 417 standard cycles. I was 28 when the war started. I am still 28 in most ways that matter. We do not age anymore. Not in the way we used to. They gathered in the ship's common area. Helena sat comfortably, seemingly at ease despite being surrounded by alien species. She accepted a drink that Dr. Halvin offered, though Vexith suspected she did not need it. "I know you have questions," Elena began. "I will answer what I can. But first you need to understand something. We did not want this. We did not want to become what we are. The war forced it upon us. What are you?" Vexith asked directly. Elena took a long breath. "That is a complicated question. The simple answer is that we evolved, or perhaps ascended is a better word. When the Unity Alliance invaded, humanity was desperate. We were facing extinction, and in that moment of crisis, something in our species awakened, a potential that had always been there, dormant, waiting." She paused, collecting her thoughts. "We started being able to affect reality with our minds. not in the way of psychic powers or magic. It was more fundamental than that. We could reach into the quantum field and influence probability. We could perceive and manipulate dimensions beyond the normal three. We could touch the fabric of space-time itself and shape it. And it spread, she continued. Once one human discovered they could do it, others learned. It was like a door had been opened in our collective consciousness. Within weeks, millions of humans had the ability. Within months, billions. It was not technology, it was us. We had changed at a fundamental level. But that should be impossible, Dr. Halvin protested. Evolution does not work that fast. You cannot change an entire species in a few months, Elena nodded. You are right. It should be impossible. We have theories, of course. Some think humanity was always different, that we carried dormant abilities from our evolutionary past. Others believe we unconsciously altered our own genetics in response to the threat. A few think something else intervened, though we have no proof of that. She stood and walked to the viewport, looking out at the border. Whatever the cause, the result was clear. We stopped the invasion. We did more than stop it. We demonstrated that we could reshape reality on a scale that terrified even us. And then we realized the terrible truth. We were dangerous, not because we wanted to be, but because we could not fully control what we had become. What do you mean? Zilthos asked. Elena turned back to face them. Our very presence affects other species. When we are near you, your thoughts are not entirely your own. You begin to see things the way we see them. Your free will becomes compromised. It is not intentional. We are not trying to control you, but it happens anyway. We exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously, and other beings get caught in our wake. She sat back down, her expression sad. That is why we withdrew. Not because we feared retaliation. Not because we wanted to conquer and needed time to prepare. We left because we were becoming a threat to everyone around us. We were changing reality just by existing, and we could not stop it. The only solution was isolation. The sculptures, Vexith said quietly. The Unity Alliance ships. You left them as warnings, yes and no, Elena replied. They were warnings, but they were also art. We had become beings that could create on a scale we never imagined. The ships that attacked us were tools of war and conquest. We transformed them into expressions of beauty. It was our way of showing that we bore no malice. We could have destroyed them completely. Instead, we chose to create. Can they be saved? Halvin asked. The crews inside? Helena nodded. Yes. If the galaxy ever asks if you are ready to face us again, we can restore them. They exist in suspended time. For them, barely a moment has passed. We keep them as a reminder, to ourselves and to others, a reminder of what we can do and what we choose not to do. Vexith leaned forward. You said if we are ready. What does that mean? When will the galaxy be ready? Elena smiled, a touch of sadness in her expression. When you can look at us without fear. When you can interact with us without your instincts screaming to run away. When you can accept that we are different now, but still your friends, still your neighbors, still human despite everything we have become. She stood, preparing to leave. You came here seeking knowledge, Vexith. I have given you what I can. Now you have a choice. You can take this knowledge back to the Concordance. You can begin the slow process of helping your people remember without fear, or you can forget. And I will ensure that forgetting is painless and complete. The choice is yours. Vexith stood as well, meeting Elena's eyes. I want to remember. I want to help others remember. I want to fill in the blank space on my map, not with warnings or fear, but with hope, with the understanding that one day maybe we can be neighbors again. Elena smiled, genuine warmth in her expression. Then you will be our ambassador. We will protect your memories, shield them from the genetic fear, and when you return to the Concordance, you can begin the long work of reconciliation. It may take centuries, but we are patient. We have learned patience in our isolation. Elena offered to show them something before they left. With the crew's permission, she guided their ship across the border. Vexith felt no physical change, but her instruments went wild. The laws of physics seemed different here, more flexible. What they saw beyond the border was impossible to fully comprehend. Space itself had been reshaped. Planets existed in configurations that should not work. Stars burned with colors that did not belong in the normal spectrum. And everywhere, there were structures that hurt the eye to look at directly. This is what we have built, Elena explained. Worlds that exist in multiple dimensions at once, cities that span timelines, gardens that grow in spaces between spaces. We have learned to shape reality like artists shape clay. This is our home now. It is beautiful, Vexith whispered. And terrifying. Yes, Elena agreed. Both of those things. We have become something magnificent and strange, something that cannot easily coexist with other species. But we miss you. We miss the community we had. We miss being part of the galaxy. She brought them to a viewing platform that overlooked a structure unlike anything they had ever seen. It was a gathering place, Elena explained. Millions of humans could meet here, their minds touching across dimensions, sharing thoughts and experiences simultaneously. We are lonely, Elena said simply. For all our power, for all we can do, we are isolated. We chose this isolation to protect you, but it comes at a cost. We remember what it was like to have alien friends, to learn from other cultures, to be part of something larger than ourselves. After several hours, Elena brought them back across the border. The Wanderers' hope settled back into normal space, and the crew took a collective breath they had not realized they were holding. Before you go, Elena said, I will give you a gift. She reached out and touched Vexith's forehead. Vexith felt a warmth spread through her mind. Your memories are now protected. The genetic fear cannot touch them. You will remember everything you have learned, and you will be able to share it without the automatic terror that has gripped the galaxy for 8 centuries. She did the same for each crew member, including X-41, though the AI claimed it did not need the protection. One more thing, Elena said. She handed Vexith a small device. This is a communication beacon. When your people are ready, when the fear has faded and understanding has grown, activate it. We will know, and we will come, not as conquerors or gods, but as neighbors, as friends, as humans. How long will that take? Zilthos asked. Elena smiled. Centuries, perhaps, maybe longer. We do not age, so we can afford to be patient. We have learned that rushing only creates more fear. The galaxy needs time to heal, time to process what happened, time to choose to remember rather than being forced to remember. She looked at each of them in turn. You are the first ambassadors of a new age, the bridge between what was and what might be again. It is a heavy responsibility, but I believe you can carry it. You have already proven your courage by coming here. And with that, Elena was gone, not walking away or returning to her ship, simply gone as if she had never been there. But the beacon remained in Vexith's hand, solid and real. The journey back took 2 weeks. The crew spent the time discussing what they had seen and what it meant. Dr. Halvin was already planning research papers. Zilthos was surprisingly quiet, processing his encounter with the species he had once feared. X-41 was simply happy to finally have the truth confirmed. Vexith spent the time updating her maps. She filled in the blank space with careful detail. Not the impossible structures they had seen, but simple notations. Human space, species in voluntary isolation, approach only with invitation, expected contact in approximately 500 cycles. When they reached concordant space, they were met with confusion and suspicion. Officials demanded to know where they had been. Other cartographers looked at Vexith's updated maps with horror and disbelief. But Vexith was patient. She began slowly, carefully sharing what she had learned. She started with individuals who showed curiosity rather than fear. She gave lectures at universities, speaking about the nature of genetic memory and how trauma could be inherited. She published papers about the history of human contact, backed by evidence from the archives. The work was slow. Many people refused to listen. Others listened but could not overcome their instinctive fear. But gradually, over years and then decades, attitudes began to shift. New generations grew up hearing stories about humanity not as monsters, but as a species that had chosen isolation rather than domination. As beings who had power beyond measure but used it with restraint, Vexith became known as the ambassador to the absent. She traveled across the galaxy, speaking to anyone who would listen. The beacon remained in her office, a constant reminder of the choice that lay ahead. 100 cycles passed. Then 200. Vexith grew old. Though medical technology extended her life far beyond what would have been natural, she trained others to carry on her work. A whole organization grew up around the goal of eventual reconciliation with humanity. The galactic maps changed. Slowly the blank space filled in, not with detailed surveys but with acknowledgement. Human space, friends in waiting, remember without fear. On the 300th anniversary of her journey to the border, Vexith stood before the Concordance Council. She was very old now, her scales dulled with age, but her mind was sharp and her purpose was clear. "I believe we are ready," she said. "Not all of us. Not perfectly, but ready enough. Ready to extend an invitation. Ready to say that we remember, we understand, and we choose hope over fear." The council debated for weeks. Finally, they agreed. The vote was not unanimous, but it was enough. Vexith activated the beacon. 3 days later, Elena Vasquez arrived at the Concordance chambers. She had not aged a day. She looked exactly as she had 300 cycles ago, when she had first met Vexith at the border. She smiled when she saw Vexith. "Thank you for remembering us. Thank you for not forgetting. Thank you for giving us hope that one day we might come home." The negotiations began slowly, carefully. Humans would not fully rejoin the Concordance, not yet, but there would be contact. Cultural exchanges, shared research, small steps toward a future where both sides could coexist. Vexith watched the first human cultural delegation arrive, and she felt something she had not felt in cycles. Not fear, not confusion, but joy. She returned to her office and pulled up the galactic map one last time. The blank space was still there, but it had changed. Now it showed human territory marked with a single word that represented 300 cycles of work, countless conversations, and the hope of 2 civilizations. The word was simple. The word was perfect. The word was friends. The stars blinked in the cold vacuum of space. All was quiet at the edge of the solar system. Then, without warning, a tear appeared in the fabric of reality. One ship emerged, then another, and another. Soon, thousands of vessels filled the darkness beyond Neptune. On Earth, life continued as normal. People went to work, children played in parks, and politicians argued about taxes. No one knew that humanity's greatest test was about to begin. At NASA headquarters, a young technician named Peter Collins stared at his monitor. His eyes grew wide as he saw the readings from the deep space sensors. "Sir, you need to see this," Peter called to his supervisor. Dr. Lisa Brown hurried over, coffee sloshing from her mug. When she saw the screen, the mug slipped from her fingers and shattered on the floor. "Call the director now." Within hours, the news had reached the highest levels of government. President Samuel Rogers sat in the Situation Room, surrounded by his advisors and military chiefs. "How many ships?" the president asked, his voice steady despite the fear twisting in his chest. General Natalie Wells, head of the newly formed United Space Command, pointed to the display. "Over 14,000 vessels detected so far, sir. Nothing in our arsenal can match even one of their larger ships. We estimate their technology is at least 2 centuries ahead of ours." The room fell, silent. Humanity had built only 143 space-capable vessels with any defensive capabilities. "What do they want?" asked the president. As if in answer, every screen and device on Earth flickered. Television shows, computer monitors, phones, and tablets all displayed the same image: a tall, blue-skinned alien with 4 eyes and elaborate armor. "People of Earth," the alien spoke in perfect English. "I am Admiral Zorthak of the Galactic Hegemony. Your world has been chosen for resource extraction and colonization. You have 14 Earth days to surrender. Representatives will be allowed to negotiate terms. Resistance is futile and will result in planetary sterilization." The screen returned to normal, leaving billions of humans in shock. At the United Nations emergency session, representatives from every nation gathered to form a response team. They needed someone who could represent humanity, someone with knowledge of both diplomacy and strategy. Frank Wilson had not expected to be called back to service. At 58, the retired Navy commander had been enjoying his quiet life teaching history at Georgetown University. But his experience in international negotiations during the water wars of 2031 made him the perfect candidate. "Ambassador Wilson," UN Secretary General Maria Diaz said, "you'll lead our diplomatic team. But understand this: we're buying time, not surrendering." Frank nodded grimly. "I understand, Madam Secretary, but I'll need information. Anything we can learn about these aliens could give us an edge." While politicians planned, others took action. At NASA's Advanced Propulsion Lab, engineer Sofia Garcia hadn't slept in 36 hours. She studied the alien transmission, looking for any clues about their technology. "There's something odd about their communication signals," she muttered to herself, analyzing the data patterns. "They're using some kind of quantum entanglement, but there's a strange fluctuation every 3.7 seconds. Sophia's colleague, Dr. Ethan Porter, looked up from his workstation. "What does it mean?" "I don't know yet," she replied, "but every system has weaknesses. We just need to find theirs." 7 days after the ultimatum, a small shuttle was permitted to dock with the Hegemony flagship. Frank Wilson led a team of 5 representatives, including linguists, scientists, and military advisors. Admiral Zorthak towered over the humans as they entered the massive command chamber. Alien crew members from 7 different species worked. At stations around them, some humanoid, others completely foreign in form. "Ambassador Wilson," the admiral said, his 4 eyes blinking in sequence, "your species surprises me. Most races beg for mercy within hours of our arrival." Frank maintained his composure despite his racing heart. "Humans have a long history of facing challenges, Admiral. We prefer conversation to conflict when possible." The alien made a sound that might have been laughter. "Admirable but irrelevant. We have conquered 28 star systems before yours. All eventually submitted or perished." "Then perhaps you'll indulge my curiosity," Frank said carefully. "Why bother with negotiations at all? With your obvious power advantage, why not simply take what you want?" Zorthak's upper eyes narrowed. "Efficiency. Willing subjects require fewer resources to manage than conquered ones. Besides, your species has shown remarkable creativity in certain areas. Some of your people may prove useful to the hegemony." Throughout the meeting, Frank asked questions that seemed innocent but were carefully designed to gather information. He learned that the hegemony had been expanding for over 3 centuries, that they valued hierarchy above all else, and most importantly, that they considered humans primitive and harmless. Meanwhile, on the shuttle, Dr. Julia Adams secretly scanned the alien vessel's systems while pretending to monitor human life signs. Every bit of data was encrypted and transmitted back to Earth in bursts hidden within standard communication protocols. When they returned to Earth, Frank delivered his report directly to the United Nations Security Council. "They're arrogant," he explained. "They've never lost a conflict and don't believe we can harm them. Their technological advantage is massive, but their tactics are rigid and predictable. They expect us to either surrender or fight conventionally, and lose." General Wells shook her head. "Then we're doomed. We can't match their numbers or technology." "No," Frank agreed. "We can't. But humans have always excelled at asymmetric warfare. We don't need to match them. We need to surprise them." At that moment, Sofia Garcia burst into the meeting room, ignoring the protests of security guards. "I've found something," she announced breathlessly, holding up a data tablet. "Their shield technology relies on a specific quantum frequency pattern. If we can disrupt that pattern, even our smaller weapons might be effective." President Rogers looked around the room at the assembled leaders. "Options?" "We fight," General Wells said firmly. "We use every trick, every resource, every bit of human ingenuity we possess." "And if we lose?" someone asked. Frank Wilson stood up. "Then we lose knowing we did everything possible to protect our home. But I've looked into the Admiral's eyes. They expect us to follow their rules of engagement. They expect us to lose." He smiled grimly. "Let's show them how humans fight when everything is at stake." The president nodded slowly. "Very well. We have 7 days to prepare. God help us all." Outside, night fell over a planet united in purpose for the first time in human history. Ships were retrofitted, weapons designed, and plans made. Humanity prepared for the greatest fight of its existence, against an enemy that outnumbered them 100 to. The odds were impossible. But then again, humans had always been good at beating the odds. The world had just 6 days left before the hegemony's deadline. For the first time in history, nations put aside their old fights and worked together. Former enemies shared military secrets. Scientists freely gave away discoveries that would have made them rich. In Washington, D.C., General Natalie Wells converted the Pentagon's largest room into the Earth Defense Command Center. Screens covered the walls, showing the positions of both human and alien ships. The difference in numbers was shocking. "We need more ships," she said to her team. "Anything that can fly and carry weapons." Colonel Paul Martinez, her chief of operations, looked grim. "We're converting everything we can, cargo shuttles, mining vessels, even private spacecraft, but we're still outnumbered at least 100 to 1. The general's eyes hardened. "Then we make each of our ships count for 100 of theirs." At NASA's Advanced Propulsion Lab, Sofia Garcia hadn't left the building in days. Food containers and empty coffee cups surrounded her workstation. Dr. Ethan Porter worried about her health but knew better than to suggest she rest. "I've got it," Sofia suddenly shouted, jumping up from her chair. "The fluctuation in their quantum signals, it's not random. It's a synchronization pattern for their shield generators." Ethan rushed to her side. "Are you saying we can disrupt their shields?" "Maybe," she replied. "But we need to build a device that can generate the right counter frequency. And we need someone who understands quantum physics better than I do." That someone was Dr. Richard Daniels, a brilliant physicist who had been working on quantum weapon systems before the alien arrival. Within hours, he arrived at the lab, bringing his research team and equipment. Richard examined Sofia's findings. "This could work," he said after several hours of calculations. "But we'd need to get very close to their ships. The effect would drop off rapidly with distance." Sofia smiled for the first time in days. "Then we build small, fast ships that can get close enough." While scientists worked on weapons, others focused on intelligence. Commander Alan Jackson had spent 15 years in special operations before joining Space Command. Now he led a team of 12 men and women on the most dangerous mission yet attempted. "Our target is a hegemony scout ship currently orbiting Mars," Alan explained to his team aboard the stealth transport. "Intelligence suggests it has a crew of only 20. We board, capture what we can, and extract with their data cores and any useful technology." The mission was supposed to be quick and quiet. It wasn't. The aliens fought hard, and 3 humans died in the battle. But in the end, Alan's team secured the ship and its valuable data. When they returned to Earth, technicians and linguists immediately began studying the captured information. What they found gave humanity its first real hope. At the United Nations, Ambassador Frank Wilson presented the findings to world leaders. "The hegemony isn't as united as they want us to believe," he explained. "Their coalition consists of 7 species, each with their own agenda. Admiral Zorthak's race, the Vorn, control the military, but they need the others for technical expertise and resources." President Rogers leaned forward. "Can we exploit these divisions?" "Possibly," Frank replied. "But more importantly, we've learned about their command structure. Their ships follow strict protocols. If we can disrupt their communication or their chain of command, they might become disorganized." While leaders planned strategy, engineers and factory workers around the world built weapons day and night. Some were conventional, missiles, railguns, and laser systems. Others were based on new ideas from scientists like Sofia and Richard. In orbit, construction crews modified the International Space Station into a command center. Ships from every spacefaring nation arrived, forming Earth's pitiful fleet. General Wells inspected the growing armada from her shuttle. 143 combat vessels, she said quietly to Colonel Martinez, plus another 200 civilian craft fitted with whatever weapons we could attach, against 14,000 alien warships. "The odds don't look good," Martinez admitted. "No," the general agreed, "but odds don't win wars. People do." Back on Earth, Richard and Sofia had created a working prototype of their quantum disruptor. During tests, it had successfully disabled shield systems salvaged from the captured scout ship. "The effective range is only about half a kilometer," Richard explained to military leaders. "To use it, ships will need to get dangerously close to hegemony vessels." General Wells nodded grimly. "How many can we build in 5 days?" "Maybe 30, Sofia answered. "We're teaching other labs how to make them, but the components are rare." Build what you can, the general ordered. We'll put them on our fastest ships. As the deadline approached, Earth made final preparations. Civilians moved into underground shelters. Military personnel said goodbye to their families. Pilots trained for missions they might not survive. In his quarters aboard the space station, Frank Wilson recorded a message for his granddaughter back on Earth. "I don't know if we can win this fight," he said honestly. "But I want you to know that everyone up here is doing their best to protect you and all the children of Earth. Humans have faced impossible odds before. It's when we're most threatened that we show our true strength." On the final night before the deadline, Sophia and Richard worked to install their device on the designated ships. During a rare break, they stood at a viewport, looking at Earth. "Shining below them, it's beautiful," Richard said quietly. "Yes," Sophia agreed. "Worth fighting for no matter the odds." Richard hesitated, then spoke. "If we somehow survive this, would you consider having dinner with me sometime? A real dinner, not energy bars and coffee in a lab." Sophia smiled and took his hand. "I'd like that." The peaceful moment ended when alarms blared throughout the station. On the main view screen, thousands of alien ships moved into position around the solar system. General Wells addressed all Earth forces. "The hegemony expects us to surrender. They believe their superior numbers and technology make our defeat inevitable. They've never faced humans before." Her voice grew stronger. "Show them what we're made of. Show them that Earth will never surrender. For our home." Throughout the fleet, humans prepared for battle. They were outnumbered and outgunned, but they had something the aliens didn't understand: the desperate courage of people fighting for their world, their families, and their future. The final hours of peace ticked away. Earth's fleet moved into defensive positions. The greatest battle in human history was about to begin. The deadline passed without a surrender message from Earth. On board his massive flagship, Admiral Zorthak watched the view screen with all four of his eyes. He had conquered many worlds, but none had ever refused his final offer. This puzzled him. "The humans choose death over submission," he said to his second-in-command, Sub-Admiral Krex. "Prepare the first attack wave." 1,000 hegemony warships moved forward, their engines glowing against the blackness of space. They targeted Earth's outer defense stations first, the early warning platforms and weapon satellites in the far reaches of the solar system. In Earth's command center, General Wells watched grimly as the first human defenses were destroyed. The aliens were methodical, moving in perfect formation and following textbook invasion procedures. "We expected this," she reminded her officers. "Let them think they know how this battle will go." As the hegemony fleet pushed deeper into the solar system, they met their first real resistance. Earth's ships, vastly outnumbered, did not engage in the way the aliens expected. Instead of forming a defensive line, the human vessels attacked in small groups from multiple directions. Lieutenant Grace Martinez commanded the ESV Defiant, one of the fastest ships in Earth's fleet. Her vessel carried one of the precious quantum disruptors that Sophia and Richard had built. "Remember the plan," she told her crew. "Get close, activate the disruptor, strike and retreat. We can't win in a direct fight." The Defiant accelerated toward a group of 3 hegemony cruisers, moving faster than the alien gunners could track effectively. When they were just half a kilometer from the nearest cruiser, Grace gave the order, "Activate disruptor now." The quantum device hummed to life. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then, the alien ship's shields flickered and failed. The Defiant fired every weapon it had, targeting the cruiser's engines and weapon systems. As the alien ship began to break apart, the Defiant was already speeding away toward its next target. Similar scenes played out across the solar system. The quantum disruptors worked, but only at close range. Human ships had to make dangerous attack runs, and many did not survive. But for each Earth vessel lost, they managed to damage or destroy multiple hegemony ships. Admiral Zorthak received reports of the unexpected losses with growing anger. "How are they disabling our shields?" he demanded. "Their technology should be primitive compared to ours." His science officer had no good answer. "We're studying the effect, Admiral. It appears to be some kind of quantum interference. Meanwhile, Ambassador Frank Wilson was on a more secret mission. The captured scout ship, now crewed by humans, was following Alan Jackson's plan. Using the alien ship's identification codes, they slipped past the outer lines of the hegemony fleet. So far, so good, Alan said quietly, though sweat beaded on his forehead. They think we're one of theirs. Frank nodded tensely. Let's hope it stays that way until we reach the command section. Their mission was dangerous but vital. Plant misinformation in the hegemony's communication networks and gather more intelligence about their fleet structure. Back on Earth, Sophia and Richard worked frantically to build more quantum disruptors. They had taught other facilities how to create them, but the process was slow and delicate. We need more time, Sophia said, exhaustion clear in her voice. Richard squeezed her shoulder gently. The fleet is buying us that time. We have to make it count. In space, the battle grew more intense. Despite humanity's clever tactics, the sheer numbers of the hegemony fleet were overwhelming. For every alien ship destroyed, Earth lost precious defenders that could not be replaced. Lieutenant Grace Martinez and the Defiant had just disabled their fifth enemy vessel when disaster struck. A hegemony destroyer detected them and fired a plasma beam that tore through their hull. Engine room hit, her tactical officer shouted over the blaring alarms. We're losing power. Grace made a quick decision. Divert all remaining power to the quantum disruptor and weapons. Set collision course with the destroyer. Her crew looked at her with understanding in their eyes. No one objected. The damaged Defiant accelerated toward the much larger destroyer. The alien ship fired again, further crippling the human vessel, but couldn't stop its approach. When they were in range, Grace activated the disruptor one last time. For Earth, she said quietly, as the Defiant rammed into the destroyer's unshielded hull. The resulting explosion destroyed both ships. Across the battlefield, Admiral Zorthak observed the human tactics with growing concern. These creatures fought differently than any species he had encountered. They sacrificed themselves willingly, used unpredictable attack patterns, and seemed to target his fleet's command structure. They are not fighting to win, he realized suddenly. They are fighting to hurt us as much as possible before they lose. What the Admiral didn't understand was that humans were also fighting for time. Frank Wilson and Alan Jackson's team had successfully infiltrated deep into the hegemony fleet. Using knowledge gained from the captured ship, they planted false orders and misleading target information into the enemy's communication systems. Their military hierarchy is rigid, Frank explained as they worked. Lower-ranking ships don't question orders from above. We can use that against them. The misinformation caused confusion among the hegemony forces. Several battle groups changed course to defend against attacks that weren't coming, while others fired on empty space where they believed human ships were hiding. Despite these small victories, Earth's defenses were failing. The hegemony pushed relentlessly toward the inner solar system, destroying everything in their path. The human fleet, now reduced to less than half its original size, was forced to retreat closer to Earth. In the command center, General Wells received the grim news. We've lost the outer defense line. The moonbase reports hegemony ships approaching their position. Colonel Martinez, whose daughter had commanded the Defiant, stood straighter despite his grief. What are your orders, General? She studied the tactical display for a long moment. Signal all remaining ships to fall back to Earth orbit. Tell Sophia and Richard to prepare for Phase 2. Phase 2 isn't ready, Martinez warned. They said they need at least another day. They have 3 hours, the general replied firmly. After that, the hegemony will be in position to bombard the planet. As Earth's battered fleet regrouped, Admiral Zorthak prepared for what he believed would be the final phase of the conquest. His forces had taken losses, more than in any previous campaign, but victory was still certain. The humans had fought bravely but futilely, or so he thought. What the Admiral didn't know was that humanity's true plan was just beginning to unfold. In the asteroid belt, thousands of automated mining vessels, reprogrammed for a new purpose, waited silently. In laboratories around the world, scientists made final adjustments to a weapon never before used in combat. And aboard the disguised alien scout ship, Frank Wilson and Alan Jackson prepared to strike at the heart of the enemy fleet. The most desperate phase of humanity's defense was about to begin. Earth hung in space, blue and beautiful. The battered remains of humanity's fleet formed a thin line of defense around the planet. Behind them, millions of people watched the skies and waited. The hegemony forces approached in perfect formation, their massive ships dwarfing Earth's defenders. Admiral Zorthak studied the tactical display with satisfaction. Despite unexpected resistance, the outcome was never in doubt. His forces still outnumbered the humans by more than 50-1. Begin. Final approach, he ordered. Prepare bombardment patterns for their major cities and military installations. Sub-Admiral Krex obeyed, but with less confidence than before. Admiral, these humans have proven more dangerous than anticipated. Perhaps we should— Are you suggesting caution? Zorthak interrupted sharply. The hegemony does not hesitate. The hegemony does not fear. We will crush them like all the others. On Earth, in a bunker beneath what had once been NASA headquarters, Sofia Garcia and Richard Daniels made final adjustments to their new weapon. They had combined the quantum disruptor technology with something much larger, a modified satellite designed to create a massive disruption field. If this works, Sofia explained to General Wells over a video link, it should disable hegemony, shields across a much wider area, but we can only power it for about 10 minutes before it burns out. 10 minutes might be enough, the general replied. Deploy when ready. In lunar orbit, Frank Wilson and Alan Jackson had reached a critical position within the hegemony fleet. Their captured scout ship had allowed them unprecedented access to enemy communications. We're in position, Alan reported to Earth Command, ready to upload the virus on your signal. The virus was a sophisticated program designed by Earth's best hackers. It would target the hegemony's automated defense systems and, if successful, turn their own weapons against them. General Wells looked at the tactical display one last time. Earth's remaining ships were hopelessly outnumbered. Their only chance was to coordinate their attacks perfectly. All units, she said into the command channel, prepare for Operation Thunderstrike. This is not a drill. I repeat, this is not a drill. Across the solar system, hidden assets moved into position. In the asteroid belt, programmer Olivia Wright sent the activation signal to thousands of automated mining vessels. For months, these ships had been quietly refitted with minimal weapons and simple but effective ramming systems. Mining fleet activated, Olivia reported from her station on Mars. Course set for the hegemony's right flank. Admiral Zorthak was moments away from ordering the first bombardment when alert signals flashed across his command center. Admiral, his sensor officer called out. Multiple contacts approaching from the asteroid belt, thousands of small vessels. Before the admiral could respond, another officer shouted, Energy spike detected near Earth's moon. Some kind of massive power. Build up. Sofia and Richard had activated their enhanced quantum disruptor. The satellite-sized device began to pulse with energy, sending waves of quantum interference outward. Across a vast section of space, hegemony shields flickered and failed. General Wells gave the order. All ships, attack now. Concentrate fire. On their command vessels. Earth's fleet surged forward. Though small in number, they struck with precise coordination, targeting ships identified through Alan's intelligence. Without shields, the hegemony vessels were suddenly vulnerable. At the same time, Frank and Alan activated their virus. Throughout the alien fleet, automated defense systems began to malfunction. Weapon turrets swiveled to target friendly ships. Navigation systems sent vessels on collision courses with each other. Admiral Zorthak watched in disbelief as chaos spread through his perfect formation. What is happening? Restore order immediately. But there was little his officers could do. The coordinated attack from multiple directions had caught them completely by surprise. From the asteroid belt, thousands of automated mining ships slammed into the hegemony's flank. Each mining vessel was small and lightly armed, but there were so many of them that the aliens couldn't stop them all. They crashed into engines, weapon systems, and command centers, causing massive damage. Richard and Sophia monitored their quantum disruptor from Earth. The device was already beginning to overheat. 5 minutes until failure, Richard reported, grimly. Sophia gripped his hand. Make them count. In space, the hastily completed ESV reckoning, carrying an improved quantum disruption field, pushed deep into the heart of the enemy fleet. Its captain, a veteran named Sam Lewis, had volunteered for what everyone knew was likely a suicide mission. Getting interference readings from the main disruptor, Sam reported. Activating our system now for maximum effect. The two quantum fields resonated with each other, creating a cascade that temporarily disabled shields on hundreds of hegemony ships. Earth's defenders seized the moment. Every remaining vessel fired everything they had at the suddenly vulnerable alien ships. The space around Earth lit up with explosions as dozens of hegemony vessels were crippled or destroyed. On the hegemony flagship, systems failed one after another. The virus had spread through their network, turning the ship's sophisticated automation against itself. We've lost control of defensive systems, Sub-Admiral Krex reported, panic in his voice. The humans have somehow infected our core processors. Admiral Zorthak stared at the tactical display in shock. His perfect fleet was in disarray. Ships collided with each other or fired on friendly vessels. Human attackers struck precise, devastating blows at critical targets. For the first time in his career, the Admiral felt fear, not just for the battle, but for the hegemony itself. These humans had done what no other species had managed. They had turned the hegemony's strengths into weaknesses. Sound the retreat, he ordered quietly. Krex couldn't believe what he'd heard. Admiral, we've never... Sound the retreat, Zorthak roared. Now, before we lose everything. Throughout the fleet, the retreat signal flashed. Hegemony ships broke off their attack and began to pull away from Earth. Their perfect formation was gone, replaced by a chaotic withdrawal as each captain sought to save their own vessel. In Earth's command center, officers stared in disbelief as the enemy fleet began to disperse. They're retreating, Colonel Martinez said, his voice filled with wonder. General, they're actually retreating. General Wells couldn't quite believe it either. Maintain pressure. Don't let them regroup. Earth's forces pressed their advantage, continuing to strike at the disorganized alien fleet. The mining ships from the asteroid belt harried their flanks, while the remaining military vessels targeted any ships that seemed to be attempting to coordinate the retreat. After hours of continued fighting, it became clear that the hegemony force was truly withdrawing from the solar system. Their once mighty armada, still powerful despite its losses, was abandoning the field. Humanity had achieved the impossible. Outmatched in every conventional measure of military power, they had defeated an enemy that had never known defeat. As the last hegemony ships disappeared into the darkness of space, celebrations erupted across Earth. But those in command knew that this victory, while meaningful, might be temporary. They'll be back, Frank Wilson warned the president during an emergency briefing. Perhaps not soon, but eventually. And next time, they'll be prepared for our tactics. President Rogers nodded solemnly. Then we'll be ready for them. We've learned that we can stand together against any threat, and we've captured enough of their technology to improve our own defenses. In orbit, recovery ships collected debris from destroyed hegemony vessels, precious alien technology that would help Earth prepare for the future. Scientists like Sophia and Richard would study these artifacts, learning the secrets of advanced space travel and weapons systems. The victory had come at a terrible cost. Thousands of brave men and women had given their lives to defend Earth, but their sacrifice had saved billions. As night fell across the planet, people looked up at the stars with new understanding. They were not alone in the universe, and they had proven that humanity, despite its divisions and weaknesses, could stand against even the most powerful foes when united by a common purpose. The message was clear. Earth was not to be underestimated. 1 year passed since the Battle of Earth. The planet had changed in many ways. Nations that once fought each other now worked together. The wreckage of alien ships provided new technologies that advanced human science by decades. And far above, The Earth, a new structure, floated in orbit. Harmony Station had once been the International Space Station. Now it was 5 times larger, partly built with salvaged hegemony materials. It served as Earth's diplomatic outpost to the stars, a symbol of humanity's new place in the galaxy. Frank Wilson straightened his formal uniform as he waited in the station's main conference room. A year ago, he had been sneaking through an alien fleet, planting a virus that helped save Earth. Today, he was about to meet the admiral of that fleet face to face, not as enemies, but as diplomats. "Ambassador Wilson," said Colonel Martinez, who now served as Frank's security chief. "The hegemony shuttle is docking now." Frank nodded. "Is General Wells ready?" "Yes, sir. She's waiting in the adjacent room." After their victory, General Natalie Wells had become a global hero. Her leadership during the battle had saved billions of lives. Now she would help represent Earth in its first formal negotiations with the hegemony. The door opened, and 3 aliens entered. Admiral Zorthak led the group, his blue skin and 4 eyes immediately recognizable from the broadcasts a year earlier. He seemed somehow smaller now, his posture less commanding. Behind him came 2 other aliens of different species, members of the Hegemony Council. "Admiral," Frank said, extending his hand in the human gesture of greeting. "Welcome to Harmony Station." Zorthak stared at the offered hand but did not take it. "Ambassador Wilson, we meet again under different circumstances." "Please sit," Frank offered, gesturing to the large round table designed to accommodate beings of various sizes and shapes. When everyone was seated, General Wells entered the room. Her uniform displayed the new Earth Defense Force insignia, a globe with a shield. She took her place beside Frank. The formal negotiations were scheduled to begin in an hour, with full delegations from both sides. But Frank had requested this private meeting first. "Admiral," Frank began, "before we start official talks, I wanted to speak with you directly. Our peoples have much to discuss about the future." Zorthak's upper eyes narrowed. "The Hegemony Council has sent me to negotiate terms. They believe I understand humans better than most, having faced you in combat. And what do you understand about us?" General Wells asked bluntly. The alien was silent for a moment. "That I underestimated you. That we all did." Frank leaned forward. "The people of Earth are ready for peaceful relations with the hegemony. But we need to know, will your forces return to attack us again?" One of the other aliens, a small green being with multiple limbs, spoke up. "The hegemony is divided on this matter. 3 of our 7 species advocate for peaceful relations with Earth. The others—" He trailed off, looking uncomfortable. Zorthak finished the thought. "The others demand revenge. They see your victory as an insult that must be answered with force." "And where do you stand, Admiral?" Frank asked quietly. The alien commander looked directly at him. "I stand before you stripped of much of my authority, Ambassador. My failure at Earth has damaged my standing. But the Council still values my tactical assessment." He paused. "I have advised against further military action against your world." This surprised Frank. "Why?" "Because you would destroy us." Zorthak's voice was matter-of-fact. "Not just defeat us, destroy us. The hegemony has conquered through superior numbers and technology for 3 centuries. We have forgotten how to adapt, how to fight against the unexpected. You humans—" He shook his head in a gesture that seemed almost human. "You are dangerous in ways we cannot predict." General Wells smiled slightly. "That's the nicest thing anyone's ever said about us." After the meeting, Frank and Natalie walked through Harmony Station toward the main diplomatic chamber. The station buzzed with activity as humans worked alongside friendly alien representatives who had arrived after hearing about Earth's victory. "Do you believe him?" Natalie asked. "About advising against another attack?" Frank nodded slowly. "I do. I think he understands something that the rest of the hegemony hasn't figured out yet." "What's that?" "That quantity isn't quality. That technology isn't everything." Frank paused at a viewport. looking down at Earth. That spirit matters. The general negotiations proceeded smoothly over the next week. Trade agreements were discussed. Borders were established. The hegemony agreed to recognize Earth's sovereignty over the entire solar system. On the final evening, Frank found Admiral Zorthak alone in the station's observation dome. The alien was staring out at the stars, his posture suggesting deep thought. "Admiral," Frank greeted him. "May I join you?" Zorthak gestured to the space beside him. "Of course, Ambassador." For a while they stood in silence, watching the stars. Finally, the Admiral spoke. "There is something I must tell you," he said quietly. "Something not included in the official discussions." Frank turned to face him. "I'm listening." "The hegemony is not the only power in the galaxy," Zorthak said. "There are others, older civilizations that have watched our expansion with concern. They did not intervene because they believed we were containing younger species, preventing them from becoming threats." A chill ran down Frank's spine. "And now?" "And now word of your victory is spreading. The news that a young, single-planet species defeated the hegemony against overwhelming odds." The Admiral's four eyes focused intently on Frank. "Some will see this as proof that humans are too dangerous to be allowed to develop further." "Are you saying we'll face more threats?" Frank asked. Zorthak turned back to the stars. "We had 100-to-1 odds and humanity destroyed us anyway. Remember that I warned you. There are darker forces in the galaxy who will see you as a threat now. They will not make our mistakes." On Earth, life continued to change and adapt. Sofia Garcia and Richard Daniels had married 6 months after the battle. Now they led Earth's most advanced research facility, studying the faster-than-light drive technology salvaged from hegemony ships. "The principles are similar to what we theorized," Sofia explained to a group of international scientists. "But they've solved problems we hadn't even identified yet." Richard added, "At our current rate of progress, we could have a working prototype within 5 years." Elsewhere on the planet, defense preparations continued. Factories built new ships, using hybrid designs that combined human ingenuity with alien technology. Training academies taught pilots and crew for the growing Earth fleet. Humanity had faced extinction and survived. They had defeated an enemy that outmatched them in every conventional measure of strength. But Frank Wilson and others who knew the truth understood that this was just the beginning. As he returned to Earth after the diplomatic mission, Frank looked out at the vast darkness of space. Somewhere out there, ancient powers were taking notice of humanity. Whether they would come as friends or enemies remained to be seen. Either way, Earth would be ready. Humans had learned an important truth. When united by a common purpose, there was no challenge they couldn't overcome. No odds, too great to defy. The stars awaited them, with promise and peril in equal measure.